Welcome back to the Kingdom Growth Podcast, where we dive deep into the journeys of high performing entrepreneurs scaling businesses and really living life on their terms. Today, we have an absolute powerhouse guest, Jon Maio, a real estate investor who's not just building a business, but also building a lifestyle. In under 3 years, Jon scaled his wholesaling operation to over $400,000 in revenue, built a lean and mean team, and is now expanding into direct to seller deals. But here's the kicker about this whole story. He's been doing all of this while traveling the world. From Asia to Mexico, Europe to Florida, Jon has just cracked the code of running a thriving real estate business remotely, which I think is amazing. Now he's moved on, he's doubling down, growing his rental portfolio, flipping properties, and really just proving that you don't need to be chained to one location to succeed in real estate. In this episode, we're diving into the mindset, systems, and partnerships that have fueled his growth. So I highly encourage you, if you're an investor, entrepreneur, or someone just trying to scale without sacrificing your lifestyle, this episode is a must listen. So sit down, buckle up, take notes, and let's get into it. First and foremost, Jon, I appreciate you taking the time to get connected with us, man. And what a story, right? I think most entrepreneurs get lost in the business and they don't really enjoy their lifestyle. So if you could just give us I covered a lot of it in the intro, but just give us a quick snapshot of who you are, kind of what your business looks like today. So that way the viewers can just get a little bit of insight from you directly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, appreciate you having me on here. Thank you for the intro. And yeah, pleasure to be here. So yeah, exactly like you said, I've been doing real estate. I've been wholesaling for 3 years now. Did like a year before that where, I bought one property in Lake Texas, tried to burr it. That didn't really work out. We could talk about that later. Wanted to be a realtor for a minute. Then I was like, that's not for me. And then I kind of found wholesaling. And I was like, all right, here we go. First, stepping stone into investment. You may as well start, at the beginning of the pipeline. And then if you get good at that, you can get good at anything. So got into wholesaling. It's been 3 years now, so kind of been just slowly building up the business. Had a W-2 job that I was working at the same time in the beginning out of Manhattan. Fortunately, it was a remote job. I had just moved down to Florida and was working that job out of Manhattan, and then just wholesaling at the same time. So I think that was probably, I want to say like 8 or 9 months, maybe 9 months, I guess, that I was doing both at the same time, kind of building up, the wholesale, learning the ropes that way. And then, decided, I was getting enough income on the wholesale side, felt confident enough that I, dropped the W-2. And then I think 2-3 days later, went to Asia with my, at the time, girlfriend, who's now my wife. We decided, hey, let's go to Asia for a couple weeks. We ended up staying there for 10 months. She fortunately also works for herself. She's got a social media business. So, we both were not kind of like tied down to anything. We thought we were going to go for a few weeks, and then we were like, let's stay a couple more weeks. And then we were like, well, may as well just stay a couple more months. And then eventually we're like, all right, I guess we got to go home now. We have like some family to see and some stuff to do 10 months later. Just kind of built the business, wholesaling from over there. Came back after that. We got engaged while we were there, got married when we got back home. Did a little mini moon, went to Mexico for like 3 weeks or so. Then we did a regular honeymoon, went to Europe for 8 weeks. And then we did a third, honeymoon. We just kept calling them all the honeymoon. Went to Asia for another 2 months last year. So I think all in all, 6 months of traveling around throughout the globe last year also. And then kind of bouncing around between Florida and New Jersey. Just kind of wholesaling the whole time, doing a few flips kind of here and there, wherever they just kind of presented themselves pretty much as like an opportunity. Same thing on the rentals at the time, just kind of picking them up whenever it kind of made sense. 2 were like seller finance deals. 1 was a flip that wasn't turning out properly, so decided just to keep it as a rental. And that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, we met at a real estate event in Tampa, Florida. If I'm not mistaken, a multifamily real estate event. I believe that was in 2022 I'm pretty sure that's where we met. It was the MFM 3-day workshop, I believe.
It must have been, yeah, because I remember when I was in Asia, we were talking. I remember being on the beach in Thailand, and it was like midnight for me. There was like a fireworks, like fire dancer show going on, and I was on the beach talking about a deal with you. And my wife was like, "What the heck are you doing? Like, come over here." And I was like, "Well, and deals don't sleep."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And really, if and that shows the power of connections and networking just overall. But I'm curious, what when you left the W-2, because I think a lot of people they want to leave their W-2 right away. If you don't mind, kind of sharing what when you left the W-2, were you already a six-figure earner, or was a six-figure mark kind of new for you overall?
It was new. I wasn't there. I think maybe in that first like 8 or 9 months, I want to say I did like maybe 80K, 90K, something like that. But it was like gradual. Like I didn't do anything for the first 3 months, and then I did like I don't know. I think maybe 7,500 or something the first month, and then it was kind of like building up. So I had a couple months in a row that was I don't know at least 10K, something like that at the point. And I had a lot in the pipeline. It was getting to the point where in the beginning, it was super easy to do both. Like I could do my W-2s, go in my meetings, especially being remote. That was like a blessing. And I could just kind of fit it in like whenever I needed to. I was also like a manager at my W-2, so I had a little bit more control over like when my meetings were actually going to like happen. So I just did both in the beginning. At nighttime, I was just wholesaling the whole time, like ripping the phones, text messages, scheduling all my text messages, like all that kind of stuff. In between meetings, doing that. And then eventually it got to the point where like I felt like I was missing out on real estate opportunities because of my W-2. And I was like pretty confident by that point that if I could just, give myself more time on the real estate side, that I'd make even more income. And yeah.
So really, you didn't leave the W-2 until you felt like you were losing opportunities on the real estate side.
For
Uh,
sure, yeah. And
that's
I
what,
think that's pretty much in my opinion, that's what everybody should do. Unless you have a W-2 that's like, I don't know, like, you're on the go 18 hours a day and like you really don't have any time anywhere. But I think most people, if you work a regular like 9 to 5 job, that's only like 8 hours and there's 24 hours in a day. You only need 7 or 8 to sleep. There's still another full work day in there that you can put towards your whatever your side hustle is.
exactly. And really, I mean, going to your point about like just making sure it's a side hustle, and then when you can replace your income, great, right? But there was, I'm assuming, and I'd love for you to dive into this some, but that period of working the W-2 plus the wholesaling, there was probably periods in there where life wasn't balanced, life wasn't perfect, but you kept pushing forward. I mean, the one thing I'd love to understand that I think would be really beneficial overall is through that process, like what's the best piece of advice you could give to somebody that's starting out exactly where you were, working a W-2, trying to start wholesaling, and let's be real, life is not balanced when you're actually doing that.
Yeah.
So what would be that one biggest piece of advice that you know now that you wish you knew back then?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so many pieces of advice. That's such a good question. Well, yeah. I mean, I would say for sure, back to the first part of your question, I mean, life was definitely not balanced. Like, I mean, I was working all day, every day. Honestly, it's still not balanced now. I mean, I still work all the time. Even when I'm traveling, I'm still working. But, for me, it's like I enjoy what I'm doing. So it's not really like, I'm not dreading it. Like, you don't get the Sunday scaries or anything like that you normally get at like a W-2 job. So it doesn't really hit the same way that like working so much does in like a regular W-2. It's different when your input like also affects your actual like output and like the money that you get in the future. Whereas W-2, it's not always that if you work super hard you get more money. So um, I would say for sure in the beginning it was definitely not balanced. I was working from 7 in the morning. I probably was like not going to the gym at the time because I was spending that extra time towards like doing the wholesaling on the side. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say in terms of the advice side, I always think about that saying that people say where it's like you need to work today like nobody else will, so you can live tomorrow like nobody else can. So I always think about that. Like, you just got to grind, like right now. So that way, 5, 10, 20 years down the line, whatever it is that your goals are, you can have this life that not everybody has because most people aren't willing to pay the price of doing it now. So, it's only temporary. It's not like you're going to have to grind your entire life, especially if you go to like the real estate meetups, you see these people that are like, they don't work at all. They're just there to talk about real estate like once a week and hang out. And they're just, living off the work that they did in the past before. So yeah, I would say, definitely you got to pay the price if you want to live the life that you want to live.
That I mean, I think that's really good, right? You got to pay the price now to live the life you want to live later. With
Yeah.
the but however, with that being said, when you say do the work now to live the life you want to live later. I think one thing that you've been able to do really, really well, and maybe it is or isn't balanced, right? We could say it's not, but like one thing you've been able to do well over the past couple years, even running a lean team, you still travel a lot. I feel like every time I talk to you, you're in a different country, you're doing something
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
so so really, it's not. I mean, you went from a W-2 job to being able to travel the world in under 3 years, complete kind of transition. At what point through that journey over those years, when did you when did you go from solo operator right into hiring acquisitions team, virtual assistants, and really focusing on scaling your business? How long had you been into it by the time you actually hired some employees?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I hired my first employee was a VA. He's based out of Tanzania, and he was my first person. I hired him. I was probably 3 months into my Asia trip originally. Maybe it must have been like February. Yeah, 3 months into that Asia trip. So I was almost a year into wholesaling, 11 months or so, and I just hired one VA, and I had just him on my team for another 3 or 4 months. So it was like solidly over a year that I was just, the solo entrepreneur there. And even when I hired that VA, he was basically just kind of like doing my admin work, like skip tracing, putting stuff into the CRM, like writing contracts, like, the things that, let me have more free time to hang out on the beach and, watch fireworks shows and talk to you. And yeah, so that was for a long time. And then the second person that I hired, she was just doing like my underwriting for me. So, I mean, which was incredible. But I mean, that took a little while to kind of build that side up. And then I operated with I had one more VA after that. So I had 3 VAs in my team for 2 years, almost more than 2 years, I'd say, like 2 years and a few months. Wow. Yeah. And, doubled my revenue in like that second year with just that same team. And, like the methods that I was doing for like wholesaling specifically were like, agent outreach, like JV deals with other wholesalers, like dispo for people, on market deals. So like super, like very minimal expense on the other side. So like my profit margins were like, 95%. Like it was really just us paying for my CRM and paying my VAs, based out of like Philippines and Africa. And the rest was just going in my pocket. And especially when you live in Southeast Asia, one assignment fee goes a pretty long way.
Correct. What prompted you to go that route? Like with the agent, I feel like a lot of wholesalers I talk to in particular, they don't do much agent outreach. They're like, it's weird. Agents don't want to talk to me. You've
Yeah.
built a successful operation partially off of that.
Yeah.
So what kind of what would you say, just real quick, for those that maybe want to start wholesaling or maybe they're already doing it, they're looking for more ways to increase. Like you said, you doubled your revenue in that second year, which is amazing. What prompted you to take the route that you took, like towards agents and stuff like that? Why that
Yeah.
direction?
Yeah, when I still had my W-2, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I really had no idea, excuse me. I wasn't like thinking about real estate at that point. Like I was thinking I wanted to open like a bar, a restaurant, anything along those, a nightclub. I was like, what do I do? Like I just want to do something for sure. I had the entrepreneur itch and had no idea. My now wife, she came across real estate from like a YouTuber that she followed who had like a rental property and was talking about like, how you can have passive income from your rental properties. So that's where I got into real estate because she was like, hey, we should get some passive income. Like, that sounds good. So I bought this house in Texas from a wholesaler at the time. Had no idea what anything was, didn't know what a wholesaler, didn't even know that I bought it from a wholesaler. Tried to burr it because I heard that on Bigger Pockets. Thought the rehab was going to be like 15K, but this thing had like foundation issues. It was a full gut, needed a roof. So it was like 90K in the end. And that was kind of my intro to real estate. And I was like, all right, well, that was kind of rough. So maybe I don't want to do real estate. Not quite sure. So I started looking at like insurance sales. So I was like taking a course on like life insurance. And then I was like, that real estate kind of was fun. Once I started to get a couple like paychecks from the tenants, and I was like, I guess that was nice. And then I was like, listening to Bigger Pockets still. I was like, all right, maybe I should be a real estate agent. So I got into the real estate agent thing, started showing houses to buyers. And I was like, well, this sucks. I don't want to show houses to people. Like, I want to buy houses. And then I was like, all right, that's when I came across wholesaling. I heard it from a guy at a local RIA. And then I was like, okay, like, let me learn how to wholesale. And I just started kind of dumping money into it. And I still had the W-2 at the time. So like I had that income coming in. But I hired, I think, like 3 VAs immediately because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. I had like, the cold calling, like texting platform, cold call platform, the multi-dialer. I was buying lists. And so I probably like pumped in, I don't know, like $3,000 a month, right away. And at the time, I wasn't making that much at my W-2. So, and I had no idea how to wholesale. So I didn't get any leads. I didn't get any deals. Even if like an amazing motivated seller had like answered the phone, I probably wouldn't have even known what to do. So it was like such a waste. So I was sending out direct mail. I was doing everything. So then, I came across, Jamil Damji and like Astro Flipping, and spoke with like one of their recruiters, and kind of their main message was like, hey, you can do this without having to pay for all this marketing. And I was like, well, that's really good because I've just been dumping money into marketing over here, and it doesn't seem like this wholesaling thing's going to work out. So I was like, all right, let me give that a try. And then joined that kind of like mentorship, got like an actual like mentor in there, watched modules, learned how to wholesale, networked with other wholesalers. And then, just started to kind of, see some success on that side. And just, made sure that I really tried to stay like as focused as I could, because in the beginning I already saw like the issues of trying to do like, realtor, everything, insurance, direct mail, cold calling, blah, blah, blah. So I already knew about, the shiny object syndrome, and was trying to make sure I didn't do that.
Well, and actually, I would love to ask that. What helped you stay laser focused? How did you stay laser focused? Why? Because you were kind of like looking at what route do I go, where, and how, trying to get out of the W-2 or just live your dream life ultimately. But what was it? The investment with the mentor that made you laser focused? Was it people around you that were like, John, lock in? What actually? How did you stay laser focused? Because I think in today's day and age, focus is one of the hardest things to have, because we have these things called cell phones and social media.
Yeah.
And literally, you see the next big thing, crypto, right? You see the next big thing. Had a gentleman talking the other day about digital real estate. They're buying like 1 square foot of a condo in Dubai for X amount with a coin, a crypto coin or whatever.
Yeah.
There's so much out there to do. So how did you just lock in and be like, you know what, whatever it takes, I'm focused on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. And, with what you were saying too, I kind of thought it would go away, but it really never goes away. And like, as you start to make more money, like I even find that it's kind of the opposite. Like more and more opportunities like show up, and they become bigger opportunities. Like in the beginning, it's like, here's a way to make $1,000. And then year 2, it's like, here's a way to make $10,000. Then year 3, it's like, here's a way to make $1 million. It's like, it's kind of crazy. So like, the shiny objects keep getting shinier and shinier. So you really have to kind of focus in and make sure that you're doing it. And yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. For sure, the number one thing was like getting an actual mentor, and just being on like weekly calls. Like I never really had that before. Besides like a W-2 when you have like your like manager, but it's not the same. And I didn't even like know that was really a thing. These like mentorships and everything. And I was surprised by like how actually helpful that was, and having the weekly call, like accountability with another person. And Jamil, he would say a thing where it's like, he would always say, it's like the monkey pushes the button, like, like monkey push the button, like get a treat, and just, keep pushing the button over and over and keep getting the treat. So I'd always think about that, and I'd be like, all right, well, I called these agents, I called these on-market deals, and I got a $10,000 check. Like, let me just keep, pushing the button and keep getting more $10,000 treats. So that was definitely, super helpful, having that mentor to just kind of like tell like stay focused, fill your pockets up with a bunch of cash before you start to look at like other stuff. That was number one for sure. And then also exactly what you said, being around other people that are also successful. And you can see the people that are successful, they do like generally one thing, maybe, 2 things, maybe, once they're really big, maybe then they've got the auxiliary, like, businesses. But in the beginning, most people focus on one thing, and especially in real estate too, you really get like niched in on stuff too. So definitely just, seeing other people focused in on their stuff, having success. And also just, trial and error. I haven't always been, perfectly focused. I've definitely done other things, even within like the wholesaling realm that I do. So, every once in a while I'll be like, damn, I just spent a couple weeks doing this or a month doing this, and I didn't get the result. And I kind of like, mentally smack myself back into focusing on what I need to do. And then also actually going to Asia that first time really kind of made me get focused. Because before that, I would say, I was kind of starting to shift towards doing a few more things, for considering like how new I was into wholesaling. I was starting to kind of like, do more like, agent, like on market, dispo for other people, JV, like kind of a lot of different methods for being only 8 months in. And then when I went to Asia, like I really just, I looked at my business, like where I was bringing in the most money. And I was like, I need to cut this down to only like, 20, 25 hours a week. Like, what am I going to get rid of? What am I going to focus on? And then really just dialed in on like two things for that whole time I was in Asia the first time.
And I'm sure that allowed you to have more time while you were in Asia as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because you cut the fat, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you cut the fat.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you really like, what would you say? And there's probably a ton of these overall, but what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've taken away? And well, let me ask you this first: do you come from a family of entrepreneurs or anything like that, or are you the first one in the family?
My father did start his own business, so definitely an entrepreneur. Not a successful entrepreneur though. So I was honestly kind of like anti-entrepreneurship the first half of my life because I saw him start a business and like fail. So I was kind of honestly more on the W-2 side. And my mother, who like I'm really close with, she had the same job, same company for 40 years. And she just retired like a couple of years ago. So she was, super loyal. My W-2, I joined it straight out of college and I was there for 10 years. Never went to another company. So I was pretty much kind of the opposite of entrepreneur in the beginning, actually.
So what changed? What flipped the switch to where you go? Like what flipped the switch? Just real briefly, what like?
Yeah, I'm not sure like the exact day. I mean, I always knew, like I always said to people, one day like I do want to start my own business, my own company. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And I was kind of, I guess, like playing it more safe in the beginning. Like, I didn't want to like quit the safe W-2. I was listening to my mom, don't quit your safe W-2 until like you've got a business plan and like, it's proven and like I've got all the capital to buy a restaurant or whatever I was going to do. So I just didn't want to like take that risk. And then, I was at that company for 10 years. Like, I was moving up through the ranks. I was managing people. I had like, I don't know, a team of like 20 or whatever plus at one point, like across the globe. They're in different countries. So, I was moving up, managing and moving up through the management ranks, but I was like kind of miserable. I was getting, like a 5% increase, or when I got like a new management title, like a 10% increase or something. And it was just so like boring and lame. And I was like, I didn't really see like any future growth anywhere in there. And then once COVID started, that's when I went remote. And then that's when we kind of got exposed to real estate. And then I just started listening to Bigger Pockets, listening to going to meetups and just kind of seeing other people that were entrepreneurs. And then I was like, okay, like this is amazing. Like this is what I need to do. Like, and the light bulb just kind of went off.
Yeah, and I think really, truthfully, I think Bigger Pockets is an amazing, really just an amazing resource overall, especially for those in it, right? If you have the membership, you get access to all kinds of stuff internally. So it's Bigger Pockets, and I would also say it's kind of like there's real people in there that you're really going to connect with. It's not just your free Facebook groups and stuff like that. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But over the years, I mean, knowing that you saw your father, who, as you classify, didn't necessarily have a successful business or not a successful entrepreneur. Your mom, W-2, like what we're taught in schools, right? Be an employee for your whole life to go spend the last 10 years of your life living how you want to. What would you say has been kind of the biggest lesson that you've learned about scaling a business over the last 3 years? And I think something that everybody could catch on to is, like you mentioned, right? Your margins were very nice. You scaled, or you were able to scale fairly rapidly with very little resources while you still traveled the world. So what would you say is some of the biggest lessons you've learned? Because I think that that's immensely valuable. Because most people just hire a ton of people to go delegate and do the tasks.
Yeah.
You took the opposite route.
Yeah. Well, like with entrepreneurship, most avenues of entrepreneurship, most of the businesses that like, your listeners are probably like starting and in, we make pretty good money. Like you've got a pretty good opportunity to have like, big paychecks, as opposed to like a W-2, unless you're in like a sales job in a W-2, but even then you're not getting like the majority of it like you do as the business owner. So it's easier to scale, I think, like numerically in like an actual business you own, because you have such more potential. So you don't need to hire 20 people in order to grow your business from like 100K to 200K or 300K or 500K. Like you just need a couple of people that are good. Even like with my team right now, like, I mean, I'm trying to get to 1 million and maybe we hire one more person. And even that, it's really more just getting my people that are currently doing it, like doing it at a higher level. So yeah, I think once you're, like in that, millions and you're trying to get from 1 million to 10 million, then you probably need to scale like a, that kind of number. But I think in the beginning, people just overestimate like how many people they actually need. And they try to just like brute force it with like quantity as opposed to like quality. So that was, that was one of the good things, at the time when I was in my W-2, I was kind of salty and I was like, screw this place. I've been here so long. But now looking back on it, like I did manage, like, I probably hired and like, managed at some point, like probably like 40 plus people. So I've had like a lot of interviews in there. I've seen a lot of people that are like bad. And then I've seen the people that like when you hire them and they're like an all-star, like how good your life feels and like how everything just becomes easier and they're helping build your business instead of you spending your time managing them, which I mean you still do, but like they're also adding to your business instead of just being, like a body there taking up time. So I've seen both sides and, just trying to stick with like, scaling slowly on the personnel side and scaling properly and then, pays off.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, to your point, we actually have one of our assistants that's been with us a while now. She's like one of those rock stars.
Yeah.
Like she'll take on extra tasks and do extra like, and it's more of like, hey, I want to help drive everything forward, right? And literally
Yeah.
like stuff gets done and it's amazing. But also, you mentioned the scaling aspect. A lot of times I maybe it's because we as entrepreneurs think bigger picture, not like what's in front of us, but the difference between scaling and growing, it's two totally different things, right? Scaling is leveraging current resources to scale.
Yep.
Growth is hiring people, software, systems, implementation, all that stuff.
Yep.
So taking someone like yourself where you can scale, leveraging current resources, and then just squeeze as much lemon juice or squeeze as much juice out of the lemon as you can, and then go ahead and grow, like you said, maybe adding someone else or maybe new systems.
Yeah.
And it also, you are transitioning a little bit into the buy and hold and the rental properties. Are you kind of making that transition just because you don't want to focus solely on wholesaling anymore, or what? Because that's a whole different business path, kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm full on transitioning into those. It's just, like kind of adding more tools into the tool belt just to get deals done. Um, and on the rental side, I mean, really the only reason that I'm trying to get any more rentals at the moment isn't for like cash flow. Like I'm really focused more on the wholesale side and like flipping for like cash flow, but it's just to like get the tax benefits. Cause I'm at the point where, it's starting to pay a lot in tax and I'm like, this is not nice. So the last one that I bought, I got this rental property in St. Augustine, and it was just like a killer seller finance deal. $700,000 house. I paid the seller $10,000, and they gave me 3.5% interest rate for the rest. So it was just a killer deal. Didn't have to put like any money into it. It was a perfect house, like 2014, like beautiful 4,000 square foot house. So it was just like a great deal that kind of fell into my lap, just doing my regular wholesaling. And then that saves me like, I don't even know how much on my tax, but it's a lot. So that's kind of my strategy on the buy and hold side, just to counteract the taxes. And I'm interested eventually in like multifamily and things like that. And then, yeah, on the flipping side, just to, bring in some more income, as, I've been doing it for like 3 years, I've got some good contractors in my network. At the last one I did also was this mobile home that was like a novation. So didn't have to put any money to get into the deal, just paying the seller on the back end. Super easy, took like 4 weeks to renovate it. It's on the market now. And all I had to pay for was just like the rehab, which I just put on my credit card, and it was a mobile home, so it wasn't bad. And yeah, so just kind of taking the layups on the flipping side right now, because I don't want to take away too much from the wholesale focus. But nope, still 99% wholesale.
Well, and I heard you mention like the flip on the innovation deal, and you mentioned you kind of leverage a credit card. How much has leveraging debt properly to this point actually helped you in your business overall? Would you say it's been really beneficial, or are you just at a point now where you really know how to leverage OPM, or did you just do that the whole time?
I actually rarely have used my credit card for leveraging anything, because I've been fortunate that most of the ways I've been doing the wholesale has been kind of like relatively, low cost methods. So I've really only used my credit card just for, like the couple flips that I've done. And the first one, honestly, it probably was a bad idea to use my credit card for that one as much as I did, because that one ended up having some problems, got hit by like a Hurricane Ian back in the day in Florida, got totally damaged. So now I'm actually trying to be a little bit more conservative on the other side of that, and kind of steer away from, having so much debt. But yeah, I mean, I know some people that use it pretty powerfully.
That's why I asked, because some people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a guy that bought like his first storage unit building off of a credit card, like maxed them all out through credit card stacking. And
Yeah.
if it works, it works, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those. You begin to get a little hairy overall. Uh,
Exactly. Yeah. I'm trying to go more towards like the low risk ways of things.
yeah, actually, I had a meeting with a gentleman this morning, and he long story short, he's pivoting right now because he does a lot of buy and hold, but he's over leveraged right now on some flips that he did. And so he's actually transitioning to a rent to own style just to get some cash
Oh
back
yeah.
in, refinance it. But he said that he's like, man, I'm a little nervous and over leveraged right here. And it's not
Yeah.
that he doesn't have the cash. It's just a matter of like he has the cash for other projects. He's not trying to use the cash to go somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. And then
Um,
if you get stuck in one deal and you've got all your cash in there, like that's what happened to me with the one I just mentioned, where I put in a lot of money into that flip and then it got hit by the hurricane, then I was dealing with insurance problems. So that flip went from like 4 months to like a year and a half before I finally was able to like put a renter in there because I couldn't even sell it. Um, so
wow.
I just had a ton of capital just stuck in that one for a while. So now I'm kind of transitioning back towards the other way, being a little bit more, safe and just into, that mobile home deal where I've got the novation, the seller finance one. Another one I just took down recently and then just relisted on the market because it was just a nice like off market house and easy one to do. So just kind of picking off the layups.
Do you feel it's beneficial, before we move on, do you feel it's beneficial that you have your license in the state of Florida, real estate license in Florida, or no?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I get that question a lot. I think it's super helpful. I guess it kind of depends on like your method, whatever you're doing. If you're cold calling sellers, maybe it's not the most important thing because they're not really gonna like do anything. But if you're doing like the method of like agent outreach or like on market deals, agents are just more willing to work with other agents. So when I call and I say like, hey, this is Jon Maio, I'm an agent with EXP and I'm also an investor looking at this listing. They're like, oh, great. Like, okay, you're an agent and you're an investor. Like, you sound like a trustworthy guy. Like, I can look you up and see you actually do work, here and you've got this license. And they're just more trustworthy or trusting. And they'll give you more information about deals sometimes too. Like, they'll tell me what other offers they've got on the table, like where the seller's feeling. And I didn't even ask for any of that. So it definitely helps on that end for sure, just with like, your respectability and like professionalness in like a lot of people's eyes. And then it just opens up more ways to make money. I've done a couple like novations for other people where I listed for them, and they're just people that are in my network that know me and know I have a license. I picked up a couple random listings from like some friends that had houses. Relatively not like taking away from me. Like, I'm not out there prospecting for the realtor side, but picked up some more money that way.
Just a little, like a little bit of pocket
Yeah,
change
yeah,
along the
yeah,
way. A
exactly.
little
Yeah,
bit of pocket change along the way.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I really want to move into this, man, because I know this is something that you're obviously passionate about, living the nomad life.
yeah,
Uh, at the end of the day, there's so many people, not just in the U.S. but even in Asia, that you'll meet that want to travel the world. Like, that's what that's their big focus and their big picture, right? It's like, how
yeah,
can I travel the world and really just enjoy the world. I mean, at the end of the day, it's amazing to travel the United States, but there's so much outside of the United States,
yeah.
so much more cost effective outside of the United
Oh,
States
it's
once
crazy.
you're there. Maybe
Yeah,
the flights are a little bit, but once you're there, so much more cost effective.
yep.
Um, and you got engaged in 2023, married in 2024. How do you really how do you balance business, travel, personal life, marriage? Like, how do you juggle all that, man?
Yeah. Well, I'm super blessed that my wife is also in the same like mindset, and like, she also is a business owner. She's trying to grow her business. So like we travel together always, and she's very flexible with, we're both pretty easygoing about where we want to go, what we want to eat. So like, we're not arguing about like, what hotel are we staying in, where are we going to dinner. We're just like, someone bring us food. We don't even care. Just tell us what to eat and we'll eat it. We love everything. We're super easy. So we don't really have like, those general kind of like stresses of just, like being too like kind of like uptight about some kind of stuff. So that helps. And then we're just on the same page about growing our businesses and working. So generally, what we do when we travel is we'll go to a new country and we'll go to a city, and maybe you can see that city in like 2 days or something like that. But we'll stay there for like a week. And then we'll crank out like all the sightseeing. We'll see the temples. We'll see the monkey forest, like whatever it is in like day one, day two, and then we'll just chill for the next like 3 days, and we'll just work. We'll hang out in like the local cafes. We'll get like breakfast and dinner and things like that. But we'll just hang out. We'll work like a whole work day, whatever it is. But it's cool because you're in Bali and there's a monkey next to you and you're working and there's palm trees and everybody else is back home in the snow and stuff. So even though you're working, it's like really nice. And so we'll kind of balance that while we're traveling. And then, we both, at nighttime, if we're in Asia, we'll get back home after dinner or whatever and log on for a few hours and do some work. So it really helps that, the person that I'm traveling with is also kind of on that same schedule. I can imagine if she wasn't and like wanted to spend the whole day at the beach every day, then there'd be some fighting and some friction, but that helps.
And why, and I'm there with you, right? Like if yeah, like sitting on, yeah. Anyways, it doesn't, like you said, don't argue over the small stuff.
Yeah.
Go sightsee, and then you can work. Why are you so passionate about traveling, though, man? Like, why is that super important to you? What? Like, I guess the question is just what
Yeah.
attracts you to it?
Yeah, it's fun. It's a great world out there. Um, I don't know. I've always enjoyed traveling, but I didn't do a ton of it before. Like for my W-2, I traveled around some places in like America. I did go to Barcelona. I went to London. Did go to Hawaii actually. So I did a few for that. So I guess kind of got the taste then. But I don't know. Then my wife, she loves to travel, and we have a great time. We also go to like the best places, and I think we're really good at choosing the places we go and the stuff that we do, and the places that we eat. We always seem to go to the best restaurants and have the best food. And the 10 months in Southeast Asia and then another 2 months in Asia just now, like Asia is incredible. From being in Thailand,
Yes.
it's just a different level over there. Everything's amazing. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's the bug of traveling and seeing the world and meeting new people, and it helps. I eat everything, so I get to try different foods and stuff, and yeah, it's fun.
Do you feel that because I'm there with you, like Asia is just, Thailand is just next level.
Yeah,
The Philippines are okay, but Thailand was just amazing.
yeah.
Do you feel that your traveling benefits not just your company but your team, your business operation as a whole? Do you feel that has some lasting impact in a positive way when you have the ability to travel and still work? Like, do you feel it's played a pivotal role in your actual growth and scaling success over the past couple years?
It's a really interesting question because I would say yes and no, depending on how you kind of look at it. I would say on just a strictly business revenue number, I would say it's probably impacted negatively. To be totally honest, like, I mean, when I'm home and not traveling, I can do more work, and it just more does get done. It's just like kind of an inevitable fact. So I would say just bottom line revenue, like it probably hurts it a little bit. But overall, in terms of like, team morale and things like that, and just the people that like, do like follow me on whatever, the other people, the other wholesalers I work with, I people all the time message me or call me or whatever. They respond to my posts and, talk about being like, inspired from seeing it. And I think a lot of people, not everybody wants to build a business that's making $10 million. Like some people just want to make a couple $100,000, be happy, and like live a balanced life. So I think some people like to see what it's like to live a job or to have a job where you can also travel and do all that stuff. And it's not just about, the bottom revenue line. So I would say, a lot of people have reached out to me for that reason and just say like, it's so nice to see like you're making all this money and you're able to do what you're doing while still able to balance this. Whereas, a lot of people that other people you follow in like business and entrepreneur, they just kind of like push work, and like don't do anything else. Don't take vacation days. Don't do anything else. Like just work. So I think people like to see the balance, just depending on like what your goals are.
Well, it's a hustle mentality, and I think
Yeah.
hustle mentality is the hustle mentality is one of the worst mentalities you can get into. Only because years ago I met this lady. I was I can't even remember. It was quite some time ago. I was running I was a wrecker operator, and I went to go change this lady's tire, and she brought me this itinerary, and she nice lady. She's like 70 years old, and she brought me this whole itinerary, and she said, young man, I just want to tell you that don't wait to go see the things you want to see and do the things you want to do. And I was like, that's really interesting. Why is that? Well, her husband, to make a long story short, her husband had passed away about 2 months before her tire went flat and I showed up there. And she had this whole itinerary. Like, they were going to travel the world. They saved up their entire life to go literally live out the rest of their years all around the world.
Oh,
And he passed away. He had passed away a month after retirement. And she said he literally worked his whole life. They saved extra money every month. Like, they lived very frugally their entire life so that way they could travel. And then he passes away right after retirement. And so now she has this whole travel book and itinerary, and they already had some flights booked to go, and they can't even go now. And she refuses to go because he's not there with her. And I
yeah.
think that's when I learned is like, man, it's important to live your life, but also drive the puck forward and really just kind of make sure you're actually moving in the right direction overall.
Yeah.
Um, you know, what I mean, you mentioned doing 10 million a year and stuff like that, man. What does 2025 hold for you? What does this year look like for you?
Yeah, well, just to
What's
backtrack
your
a
goal?
second. So, yeah, I mean, what you're saying is so spot on for sure. I just have to talk about it for a second. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when I travel, you see, the older couple that's there, and like, everyone's on a hike, like going up this mountain, and they're struggling in the back. So, I mean, it does help to be young when you're traveling and fit and able to do these things. Like, when we go to a new city, like, Singapore, the first day we went there, we walked like 20 miles. And you gotta kind of be you gotta be a little active and able to do it to really enjoy some of these places. Like, not everything is just like you're going to sit and watch the opera or like whatever it is. So I mean, it definitely helps to do it when you're young for sure. And you never know what's going to happen in the future. You could spend exactly like you said, your first 40 years grinding, and then pass away, and then you didn't have a chance to do anything. So that definitely hits me for sure. And yeah, in terms of 2025, and actually even before that too, back on the, kind of focusing on the travel, I would say another thing too is like you really need to kind of focus on like what your actual goals are. And that was like a big thing for me. Like, I remember like right before we went to Asia, or maybe even right after we just got there, like I sat down with my wife and I was like, I'm making like at the time like 10K a month or something like that from like the wholesale. And I was like, as long as I can make 10K a month, like while we're traveling, like still working just like 25 hours or something like that, like that's enough. That when you're in Thailand and a massage for an hour is $5 and dinner for two is $5, we were like, okay, this will be okay. And then, we started to make a little bit more and a little bit more. And I was like, okay, well, this is even better. But, we had that baseline of like, just wanted to make like 120, 150 a year, something along those lines, and we'd be happy. So I wasn't like crazy stressed trying to like do 20 deals a month or anything like that. So that helped a lot, like while I was traveling. Then, then I got back home for a while and started to kind of relook at my goals. And then I was like, all right, now it's time to kick it up to the next notch. And then this last time I was like, okay, now here's my new notch of what I need to be doing each month that we're traveling. And yeah, so then that brings us to 2025 now. 2025, it's going to be kind of an interesting year for me. I am trying to scale the team a little bit more. So, I know that everybody says when you start to scale and focus on your team more and like, having the people kind of replace you out of the business, that you do take a dip on your revenue generally because, I do bring in the most revenue to my business right now. So that's one aspect. But, my guys are pretty good that I've got on the team. I am adding in like the direct to seller, which I've never really done before these last couple months. So having a little bit of success with that so far. So I'm pretty sure we're going to keep growing. Definitely minimum, I'm trying to be like 600K. That's kind of the goals. So we'll see from there. Kind of with the current team, really, maybe adding in like one more VA or so. But yeah, that's kind of the goal for 2024 revenue wise.
So going back, because I think that's super important, going back to like the goals were like, hey, I'm comfortable at 10K a month. I'm comfortable here. And then I feel like every time you hit that, a new level's unlocked. It's
Yeah,
almost like
exactly. Yeah.
it's like playing Mario, right? Where you go down the little
Yeah,
green tube and a new level's unlocked.
exactly.
What, what, I mean, have you used a vision board? Have you used stuff like that to leverage and actually grow? Or are you more of just kind of roll with the flow and, let's do as much money as possible? Like what do you feel is the number one thing that's helped you actually grow your revenue year over year goal wise? Like, are you really setting goals and saying, this is what I'm hitting, or has that not been super important for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried everything. I've done the journaling, I've done, the vision boards, the affirmations. Those never really stuck for me. I'm not really much of like a writer, I guess, for the journaling. So none of those really ever did it for me. The one thing that I've always done, like not always, but since joining the mentorship that I mentioned before, is meditating. So I do meditate like every day. I do some like yoga and things like that. So I make sure, every day I do my like meditation and kind of like some visualization with the meditation also. So that's the one thing that I've consistently done on that side. And then on the business level, for sure, goals. That was one of the good things about my W-2 also. I was a manager there for like a bunch of years. So, we had to present like our quarterly kind of like goals and KPIs and metrics and stuff. And that was it was a really big company. I think they were doing like 800 million or something like that. So it was like a huge company. So I've seen what it looks like when you're like a huge company and you've got like thousands of employees and you've got like layers and layers of management and like, what that should look like. So I've kind of tried to keep that mentality in my business of, setting these KPIs and, tracking the KPIs, setting the goals and each quarter seeing like where we're at and, just measuring all that kind of stuff. So I've just been super focused on that, where we're at, trying to grow and trying to focus. Right now, really my main focus is I'm trying to not so much do more deals, but I'm trying to do just like bigger, better quality deals. Because I find that I spend a lot of time, on some small deals, especially if you're, doing like agent deals, JV deals, dispo for people, you get some that are, like $2,500, but it might take you like the same amount of time or more as like a 20K deal. So trying to focus more on getting those bigger ones in to free up more time to then get more of the bigger deals in. So,
Are you going to transition out of Florida at all, do you think? Or do you think you can do the 600 within Florida?
I mean, Florida's got a lot of action, so I'm sure I can do it in just Florida alone. I'm really just kind of building in more avenues within Florida right now. I just hired this like PPC team, so putting like 10K a month into PPC. So,
Ooh.
yeah. Actually, you inspired me on that one. Remember we were talking about it a few months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I figured, you got to pay to play, so I'm in the game.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, because I started to add the direct to seller in because I wanted those bigger deals like I was talking about. But I was doing like, cold calling and I was still doing like my other methods, the JV, the other people. I was hiring these people on my team and I had money coming in from those like free ways, not free ways, but like, less cost intensive ways. And I didn't really have the time to put into cold calling. So I kind of had the opposite problem a lot of people have when they start, where I had more money than I had time. So I had a new mentor who does more direct to seller, and he was like, "You got to pay to play. If you've got the money, you already know what a deal looks like. You know how to talk to people. Forget about the cold calling for now, and just put the money into PPC, and get motivated leads calling you." So that's the plan for the next few months.
I just met a gentleman here local to me in Arizona. They were spending 60 grand a month on PPC, man.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're
They're
making a 4x return, why not? I'd crank it up to 60, 100, why not?
correct. Well, have you always had that mentality of like,
Yeah.
if you're getting 4x, just dump them? I'm sure had somebody told you 3 years ago, John, you need to put 10 grand a month into this, you probably would have said you're absolutely crazy. You're out of your mind. Um, but has that changed? Like, would you have put 10 grand a month back then into it,
Probably.
like you are now?
Maybe not 10. 10 that would have made me a little squeamish. But I've always definitely been a little bit more on like the risk positive side, like willing to take on risks. That's why as soon as I learned about wholesaling, I was like, okay, like let me spend $1,000 on direct mail. Like let me hire these cold callers. Like let me buy these lists. So I was kind of dumping money in right away. But then I didn't have the skills at the time, so I did that for like 2 or 3 months, and then I was like, okay, something's wrong here. This is not good. Whereas now, like I have the confidence, like I only need one deal to cover that 10K back on the PPC spend, and I'm sure we can get one deal a month once it's kind of rolling. So yeah, definitely always been a little bit more risk willing to take, and yeah, now that I've got the skills, willing to kind of dump it in.
You're willing to put. Have you always had that same mindset, where you're like, let's just figure it out as we kind of go?
Yeah, definitely for sure. That's always kind of been like one of my MOs. Definitely, definitely like yes first, and then like let's figure it out and figure it out how to do it afterwards. Um, even within my W-2, that was honestly kind of like the company's kind of motto too, like sometimes in a bad way, but they would just say yes to any opportunity. And then we'd have like a meeting of all the managers and be like, guys, we have no idea how to do this. Like, what are we going to do and figure it out? So definitely used to that.
Do you feel it served you well in the wholesaling realm and the real estate business overall?
I think yes. I mean, I definitely at times have lost some money on some things and wasted some money for sure. But nothing big, nothing crazy that's going to like hurt too much. Probably the worst one was that flip that got hit by the hurricane, but that was just kind of bad luck. But yeah, I mean, you got to be kind of willing to just kind of take some leaps and, if you don't put in the risk, you're not going to really get the reward. So, if it was easy, everyone would just kind of do it.
Yeah, and I think too, like you said, everyone would do it. Number one, but number two, it's also like, what are you willing to risk overall?
Yeah.
Right. And I think you've been overall in kind of in closing, because I know we're coming up on time here. I think one thing, number one, it's been an incredible conversation.
Yeah.
Just your journey
We're
from
this far in. Wow.
What's that?
I didn't think we were this far in. I thought it was only like 20 minutes.
Hey, if you got time, we'll keep running it, man. But really learning and hearing about your journey from W-2 into real estate, sticking with it, and really just being, and going back to the point about risk, you mentioned the first long-term rental you purchased in Texas that ended up costing you a lot of money as well.
Yep.
Most people would have given up at that point. They would have just thrown in the towel. And then you have this other flip that Hurricane Ian hit, and you're like, again, you hold on to it for a year. And so I think there's something to be said about that, because in today's day and age, everybody, the people that reach out to you and they see you travel, they see what you're doing now. They don't see the unbalanced life beforehand. They don't see the sleepless nights when you're going through all these things, or they don't see you writing the $10,000 check a month for either, right? They just see Jon, his family traveling. That's what I want to do. And really successfully being able to scale it over these years while living what most would call really a dream life. And I think a lot of it goes back to being able to stay laser focused on building. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've kind of built your business around your lifestyle, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And most people try to build the business for their lifestyle, not the other way around. And this has served you very, very, very well.
Yeah.
So for those, and out of curiosity, you've been in the industry a few years now. Are you showing people the ropes? You just focusing on your business because no more opportunities? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities out there, so I mean, I'm definitely not worried about that side. But yeah, right now, kind of focused on the team. Definitely willing to hire some more, looking to hire some more. Definitely, we'll see what the future brings in terms of teaching some other people, but trying to put some more free game out there on Instagram soon. Trying to put that out to help people, build my team. We're always looking to hire some more. So, if anybody ever wants to join, feel free to hit me up and we'll talk.
And I can vouch for Jon. He's a stand-up guy. Very, very much stand-up guy.
We've done a couple deals together. Yep.
Yeah, a couple that were a little weird too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but Jon has always been a stand-up guy. And going to the Instagram stuff, really for those that are listening, if you're looking to not just grow your real estate business, but maintain really true freedom over your life as a whole, like I think Jon is one of the few. Maybe he's not the influencer that has 10 million followers, but he's one of the few guys that are genuine, authentic, living his dream life, literally living a dream life, and running a multiple six-figure operation all at the same time. And I can promise you, I feel like every time I call him, he's in another country or some other place. I'm like, how does this happen? With that being said, where's the best place for people to connect with you, follow your content, get some more of you? What is that? What is Instagram, TikTok? What's the best place for them to actually reach you?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best one, at the real Jon Maio. That's definitely the best place to reach me. TikTok, we're not really sure where that one's going, so I haven't been posting anything on there.
You should. It's been working great for me, dude.
Really? But it's like about to get kicked or like disappear. And
they changed the law on it, so
turned
it's
it off for a day. Yeah. My wife was devastated that one day that it was off.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off track, but you're on
Yeah.
Instagram at the real Jon Mayo,
Yep.
and where else were you saying?
Facebook, you can just search my name on there. I'll pop up. If you guys want to do any deals, you can email me some deals. Just deals at flip-wave.com. And yeah, those three.
Cool. And real quick, before we jump off, Flip Wave, where does that, just fun fact, where did Flip Wave come in? Like, where's the
Good
name
question.
come from?
Yeah, I mean, I was really dying. I was trying to figure out a name for so long. And it was one of those things where, you know the name's not super important, but you really want to get a name. So for like months, I was kind of just agonizing about what name to choose. And I don't know, one day I sat there and I had like a ChatGPT up or something and like a name shuffler or whatever. And I was just pulling all these random words and I had this humongous page of like words going on. And then I was like, all right, I was getting stressed and I was like, let me do some yoga. And then I was doing yoga and the like yoga instructor was like talking about like, move your body like a wave and whatnot. And I was like, wave, like that's really nice. And I was like in a Zen spot. And then I wrote like wave on the top of the page. And I had like flip on the top of the other page. And then I still couldn't figure it out. And another like hour went by and I was like, what in the heck am I going to name this thing? And then my wife got home and then she looked at the screen and she's like, oh, like flip wave, that's a nice name. And I was like, oh, wow, it's literally been on the top this whole time. And then I was like,
Interesting.
yeah, actually, flip wave. It's nice. Yeah, you can tell real estate. It's got some vibe to it. Ocean waves, also like vibe waves. It's kind of nice.
And you just rolled right with the tide. Like, okay,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Roll with it, ups and
that's
downs.
that's why we need wives, man, to tell us, hey, it's right in front of you, dude. Figure it out.
Exactly.
So with that being said, everybody that's listening, if you got value from the episode, please make sure you drop questions. Reach out to Jon. All of his information will be down below, and connect with him. At the end of the day, he's doing deals. Are you only doing deals in Florida, or are you open to going outside of Florida as well?
Right now, only doing deals in Florida. I mean, I do have like buyers elsewhere, and I've got a pretty big network of like other wholesalers. So, if you've got deals in other country or other states or other countries, either one, happy to help out, take a look, see what I can do, connect you with some other people if it's not me, and yeah, help out however I can. So for sure, reach out.
Excellent. So for those that are listening and hear this, feel free to reach out to him for anything Florida related, anything really U.S. wide, right? At the end of the day, if it makes sense and he has the opportunity, just make sure you take care of Mr. Jon. And also remember, for those that are starting, right, scaling your business is not just about making money. It's not just about how the flashy cars. I highly doubt Jon even has all these flashy cars, flashy houses, and all this stuff. Doesn't really matter, right? It's building the life that you dream and desire, and kind of take a different approach. Build the business around the lifestyle that you want. Don't build your lifestyle around the business. There's probably a lot of people that are going to say that that is the wrong way to go about it. But you've heard from a guy right here today that has done exactly that, and I would say he's done very, very well. Especially considering their trajectory, the company, what it's done over the past couple years, and really just keep pushing forward, stay focused, and we'll see you on the next episode. And we truly appreciate everybody jumping in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.